Great. Okay.
Hello.
Here.
Mr. Jacob?
Here.
Mr. Tracco?
Here.
Mr. Rodelius?
Here.
Mr. D?
Here.
Ms. Christie?
Here.
And Ms. Bettendorf.
Here.
Adequate notice of this meeting of the Bedminster Township Land Use Board was filed with the Township Clerk and sent to the Burnersville News, Burnersville, the Courier News, Somerville, and to all subscribers, and posted at the Township Municipal Building, 1 Miller Lane, Bedminster, New Jersey, on January 13, 2016.
Stand for the flag salute, please.
Allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, it looks like we have a light night tonight. We have no minutes. We have no correspondence, no resolutions. Do you want to do, no, we don't have any completeness in the planning board section. No ordinances. So I guess we're to Highlands ordinance. And it's between Tom and Paul, whoever wants to start first.
Maybe I'll just do a quick summary. I was recovering from time. Apologize you couldn't make it because of the meeting in Colorado. It was all very straightforward. Actually, we talked about it many times. And this is the formal steps of Highlands consistency.
Hey, I'm sorry, can you just...
This is the formal steps of the planning board portion of the township's efforts that are required by law for Highlands consistency in the preservation area. And the preservation area is that area north of Pottersville Road, which therefore is a very small portion of the township. The rest of the township is in the planning area. But what these steps allow for, and actually are quite helpful to the township and helpful to the residents of the township, are, if you were to take these steps, recommending the Highlands exemption ordinance, and recommending the second ordinance, the Highlands checklist ordinance, and when get adopted by the Township Committee, if they did, they would make your preservation area of the Highlands consistent with the Highlands Master Plan, without a lot of extra work by the township, and effectively with some benefits to the township, namely that Paul, as your authorized administrative official, could grant exemptions to people trying to do something in the preservation area if they meet the standards of the statute and the regs for exemptions. And I think you've heard about some of those before. Basically, if you add on to a house in the preservation area, that's an exemption. If you build a single-family house on a single-family lot, an exemption. If you do 125% footprint of your existing footprint, that could be an exemption, provided they have to meet other standards. But this makes the exemptions are the only real way to do anything in the preservation area. The likelihood of a hardship waiver or takings waiver in the preservation area is very low. So if you would, you'll see before you, and Paul will give you a little bit of detail about this too. Two ordinances. One is the exemption ordinance. That makes it easier. It means that the township officer does instead of the DEP. Another document, the checklist ordinance, which really what it means is you can't do anything in the preservation area unless you are exempt, or before you come here, you go to the Highlands Council and to the DEP and get approval to do something that's not exempt. Very few things are not exempt. Very few things are have actually been approved in the preservation area throughout the whole 400,000 acres. So don't expect a lot of applications that would not exempt. The things are not easily approvable in the preservation area, and that's not because of you. That's just state law, state statute. So, but the checklist ordinance is what ensures that the township is consistent with the Highlands Regional Master Plan, which says very little can be done in the preservation area. So that's it in a nutshell, and maybe Paul will give you any examples of what people have experienced in Bedminster or might experience.
The purpose and the rationale behind the Highlands checklist ordinance was this. If you remember back to when we started the Highlands process, there were model Highlands ordinances for the preservation area that were like 40 or 50 or 60 pages long. They were very cumbersome, they were very difficult, and they talked about crazy stuff. Quite frankly, they did. And there were a lot of municipalities having a lot of difficulty with that, realizing they were going to spend tremendous amount of money trying to do that. So finally, the Highlands Council said, you know what? If you adopt this ordinance, this Highlands checklist ordinance, you have to do that other stuff. Because what the Highlands checklist ordinance means, and it's kind of an odd name for it, it just means that ultimately you amend your checklist to say that if there's an application in the Highlands preservation area, as Tom says, it's either already been to the DEP, Highlands Council, or granted an exemption before this planning board sees it. It's as simple as that. And that takes away this whole ordinance thing that was just a mess to wrestle with.
It's basically a stopgap mechanism that carries out the goals and objectives of the Highlands Act and the Highlands Regional Master Plan for the preservation area.
And the second piece of that is the local exception ordinance, the Highlands exemption ordinance. And there was a memorandum of understanding between the DEP and the Highlands Council that delegated a certain number of the exemptions, only about a handful of them, that could be done by a local administrator that confirms that you meet the requirements. And Tom kind of talked about a number of them. So what that does is that makes it so if somebody wants to put an addition on their home north of Pottersville Road, they don't have to go to DEP and spend 6 months and $10,000 trying to get the approval. They can make a far simpler application. Let's put it this way. I think this information I'd be looking for is probably simpler formatted than what the DEP would require. Submit it to the township. I would review it. I've been to the training at the Highlands Council, therefore I can sign off on the exemption. And we have to copy the Highlands Council and they monitor it and that sort of thing, but no, it's really pretty simple to deal with. I do it in other municipalities and it works well.
What municipalities do you also handle the Highlands checklist?
West Milford, well, it's the exemptions in West Milford and Chester Township.
Chester Township is mostly preservation?
Yeah.
And when did they adopt the compliance?
They were probably within the last 18 months. West Milford was probably 3 years ago. West Milford is 100% preservation area, so they're different
All right,
animals.
so you've been doing it in those towns for,
Yeah.
okay.
And one piece of this that's missing,
Yeah, and Tom, you're also,
My towns in Sparta and Hardyston and Byram are on some, all with both planning and preservation area like you, and all three of them adopted the checklist ordinance. First the exemption ordinance, then the checklist ordinance, but pretty much the same thing, and mostly just to be consistent, because required to be consistent, in the preservation area, and to get the exemptions handled by the local administrative official, because frankly, somebody doing an addition to their home shouldn't have to go to the DEP for an elaborate thing, which is exempt anyway. It was even reaching the point where DEP doesn't want to do them and wants the towns to take it over, and was sort of ignoring it for a while. So it's good administrative, it's good for the township, it doesn't cost a lot of money to the township, and it benefits the citizen who has the existing home or property.
as far as the cost,
well, yeah, on the cost, is there a fee structure that DEP requires?
there's nothing required by the DEP. There's a section in the model ordinance that it says it's optional for a local fee. I'll work with Judy and come up with a fee that will be, all right, this is what it's going to cost, and I will bill that to do it.
And you had the experience working with
Yeah.
Guilford and Chester Township, and you know what these exemptions, what the review is.
And the way I would do is I would set it up with a fee, and then if the documentation comes in and it's bad and they need to resubmit, there'll be a different fee for resubmission.
Does that also put the burden on you to make the determination if an exemption is truly an exemption?
Yes.
Okay.
And also, the ordinance allows me to say, I can't figure this out, you got to go to the DEP. And I've had a couple that have looked that way, and, you know, we've been able to work through them.
And do you have to go through special training to get that
Yes.
determination from DEP that you're authorized to make the exemption non-exemption?
Yes.
And you already have that, so.
Yes. Fascinating class.
I'm sure, I'm sure. All right, any questions from the board?
I just have a question, Paul. If you remember, a few months back, we approved the application for Mr. Piancone, and he was on that north side of Pottersville Road. Did he have to go through this process before he came to our?
No, because we didn't have the checklist ordinance in place.
That's what I thought.
Right now, he's basically sitting there. He may be waiting for the township to pass this ordinance, so I can look at it, and doesn't have to send it down to DEP.
Okay.
What typically, is the process to go to DEP first and then to the township if you don't have the conformance ordinance adopted?
No,
Or the exemption ordinance?
it's kind of a flaky thing. Somebody's doing in addition to a single-family structure, north of Pottersville Road. That's clearly an exempt project. We don't, at the local level, have to require that they go get an exemption. We can't grant exemption, but in the construction department, we can look at it and say, you know, we know this is exempt, so we can sign off on the permits. There are other ones that are a lot stickier than that, where we would have to send it to the DEP, and Cone is one, where it'd have to go to the DEP, because that involves a couple of different elements of the
That's what I thought.
ordinance.
So, looking at the non-residential uses up here, got Wood School, got Pottersville Fire Department. So
Burnwell.
Schools are
Schools are categorically exempt as well as houses of worship. They're categorically.
How about Pottersville Fire Department?
They are
Because
not.
they're actually talking about
Yeah, they are not
some
exempt.
changes out there.
They're not exempt.
They're not
They're not exempt just because they're a fire department.
That's a fire department. School's completely exempt, public and private school exempt under the statute and the regs.
That's one of the exemptions that I would be able to grant.
Right. But fire department, not actually exempt. Sometimes municipal things have some exemptions, that might or might not, but usually you'll take advantage of what's called the 125% redevelopment or renovation exemption, which
You can increase their impervious surface by up to 125%, increase by 25% of what's there. Fire company is virtually 100% impervious,
Yeah.
so anything they do is going to be over existing impervious surface, so it'll easily be exempt.
and with this ordinance, Paul can
I can make that
give that
determination.
exemption,
Don't have to go to.
which is convenient.
There's no changes we need to our land use ordinance because we already comport with.
That's what this would do. These are the two changes we would need to do. And then theoretically, in the future, someday, when some bureaucrat decides that they want to force it, they might try to tell you to do that 50 to 100-page ordinance for the preservation area. I don't think they will, because it's a waste of money. Because the statute and the regulations and the regional master plan already
Govern.
protect or preserve the preservation area. So, but there is that sector out there that Highlands Access update ordinances in the preservation area. But this was sort of the placement to that ordinance. Because really you don't need an ordinance if it's already preserved by the statute. But they've got to read the statute and start working.
Is there anything that we should have about the Highlands regs being revised in the future?
I don't think so, because there is some that are happening that theoretically could affect everyone. They have to do with nitrate dilution and with the degree, the number of septic systems and the potential number of lots that could be created if the regulations of the preservation area are changed, diluted, made easier. But the statute, although it doesn't require the 88 acres of woodlands and the 25 acres of farmlands that the regulations requires, the statute has other protections or restrictions in the statute itself created by the legislature, which DEP can't change, which effectively make it very hard to do anything in the preservation area anyway, even if you change the septic standards. So that is an area where things might change, and there already are draft regulations, I think, that change the nitrate dilution model, and that results in probably lesser than 88 acres of woodlands and less than 25 acres of farmland for future subdivisions in the preservation area. But I wouldn't, we have a modest amount of land, and the likelihood of subdivisions is kind of low, so. And we should always have our ordinances, which are actually in some respects better than the Highlands ordinance. They're not the same type of ordinance. They're not based on that type of model directly.
Anything else from the board?
So if the board would
So I guess-
opinion, there's no here to open to, so we don't really need to, but we'll just say, if the board's ready, you would be making a motion to find the checklist ordinance and the exemption ordinance consistent with the master plan, and to recommend that they be introduced and adopted by the township committee. Is there such a motion?
Motion to approve.
A second?
Do we hear a second?
And Trina, we get a second?
I'll second
Next.
it.
We'll second.
And a roll call, Trina.
Could I ask a question, though?
Sure.
Yes, certainly.
Just before. In the past, there was concern that people in the preservation area land would be worth less or whatever. And is that still an issue with some people?
To many people who own the land or farmers who have strong feelings about regulation, that's still an issue. These though ordinances don't make that any worse. They actually make it a little easier administratively to do things. People don't agree with this, but the courts determined that the Highlands Act did not constitute a per se taking of people's property. There theoretically could be a person who, even after the courts have decided that, could go forward and say, I believe my land has been taken as a matter of fact, as these statutes and regs are applied to my land. And I want to present this information to the DEP as to why, or to a court. The court would probably say, go to the DEP and exhaust your administrative remedies. The DEP would hear their case, make them go through 2.5 years to 3 years of proofs, and then say, we agree or don't agree with you. If they say they agree with them, they have to give them the permit or such permit as necessary to alleviate the hardship, to reduce the confiscation of the property. So what does that mean? Probably no one would ever really actually win a confiscation lawsuit in the Highland Preservation Area, because the statute and the regulations create a legal loophole that explicitly allows the department to grant the relief necessary to allow some reasonable use of the property, which is what the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled is all that's required.
There's a process, but it's very onerous, so
That's right.
chances are no one will use it.
And if you ever got, I'm not aware of anybody actually getting that hardship.
So if your question is the property worth less, the answer is yes, but there's nothing they can do with that.
Okay.
And it's surprising that, the most conservative Supreme Court that's ever, existed, it pretty much has ruled that that's what the takings law is. That it's only a taking if the administrative activity, the regulation, prevents all reasonable use of the property in question. And
It's worth what it says one word, not two.
Mhm.
It doesn't
Worth
have a
less,
list.
right.
Just because it goes down in value doesn't mean it
doesn't have a
use.
value.
That sort of it's hard and hard. That may change if, with the rulings and with cases, but that's been the law for a fairly long time. And what matters is, what does government do, and how much does it do, and is it appropriate? It's really, the courts are really saying legislatures should decide these kinds of issues.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, our legislature decided the Highlands Act. Governor agreed and signed it. It's what it is. If it gets changed,
In that event, it's well beyond us.
it's beyond you, and that was what they did, was take away your authority, at least in the preservation area. So that may change if the state legislature changes the Highlands Act. It hasn't been changed drastically since 2008 when it was adopted, so.
Right. Okay,
So do we need a roll call, Trina, and we'll
We
mark
do.
on the minutes, and Trina will refer this information to the Township Committee that the board recommended it.
Mayor Parker?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Mr. Chapa?
Aye.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Aye.
Mr. Lee?
Aye.
Ms. Christie?
Aye.
Ms. Scott?
Aye. Okay. Move on. We have application, I want to talk about,
There is one other thing on the list.
oh, yes, I am sorry,
And I
yes.
don't think you need to do, this is the start of this process.
Right.
I gave you the quick intro last week.
Yeah, the master plan re-examination, we won't do anything because it is Frank's memo that we were going to refer to, so we will postpone this until next year, which was going to be next year's subject matter anyway. So we'll,
And this type of document is a planning re-examination and a little bit of basic, not a whole new master plan. It's that the board, which adopts the master plan, takes a look at the existing master plan, considers various questions, and Frank's just giving a memo that is an email with an outline of some issues you might consider, but the board makes those reviews and perhaps makes recommendations. If at the end of the report process, you make some recommendations, those recommendations might be made by the board to the township committee. And if they involved ordinances, the township committee might adopt the ordinances that you recommend. And that's basically what re-examination is. It has to be done every 10 years. It can be done at any time.
does the board have any comments that they would like to make? No?
Well,
Nope.
it's the end of the year, and I just want to thank all the members of this board and the professionals for the hard work they did this year. It was sometimes busy year, sometimes not so busy, but everything that was done here was important. We look forward to seeing a lot of you back next year. Not everybody, we've got some notable folks that'll be leaving, but we'll hopefully backfill with some more good quality folks. Our City Merc dinner, our annual reorganization, will be Friday, January 6th,
Yeah.
and it will be at a big golf course in town, which you can find out from folks in Town Hall. We hope you all can make it.
Plan to do that. That brings up our January 5th meeting. I'm assuming we will cancel that meeting
Yep.
and have our first meeting then January 12th. And we will have our new members with us
Yep.
to join us.
And that's the only meeting in January.
That will be the only meeting in January. Yes.
So, I have a comment, and I think last week, I made a mistake. Goodness.
No.
I had said, when we were...
Let me write this down.
No, I know.
Is the video playing?
Please, no reflection.
For the record,
In the minute.
let the record show.
And George, I think I also may have repeated the mistake last night at the Environmental Commission. There were two proposed ordinances that the Land Use Board considered last week, which was the revisions to the notice requiring direct mailing and a change or certain changes to bulk standards.
Correct.
Notice within any folks or all folks within the zone that's affected. And two, the changes that the subcommittee had worked on and then reworked regarding certain bulk standards, FAR, lot coverage, people put the setbacks in there. I said that both ordinances would be scheduled for public hearing at the Township Committee for December 19th. The only ordinance that is scheduled for the public hearing is the change to the notice. The ordinance requiring direct notice to all folks of
Okay.
a change or a bulk standard change in their zone. That's the only ordinance. The change to the bulk standards that the subcommittee had discussed that ordinance was withdrawn and then will be reintroduced in 2017.
That's what we expect.
That's what we expect.
Because that was being changed, so you couldn't make a change between first and second reading. That's probably what it.
Right.
Maybe
So-
you even tabled,
but
maybe the
we-
committee even tabled it early in December or something like that. I'm not.
Right, but I believe that at the last meeting that the planning board gave a
Recommended it.
determination that the
That it's
surrounding
consistent.
changes were not inconsistent or were consistent with the master plan. So
We
does
may-
that mean we have to do that all over again?
We should, because when it gets reintroduced in January, it's another
Right,
calendar
yeah.
year. The committee cannot reintroduce something in one year and adopt it in another year. It has to introduce and adopt in the same year. And we're supposed to do that referral after the introduction and before the second reading of that particular ordinance, so.
So therefore, December 19, the public hearing will be for the change that currently requires direct mailing to all folks in an affected zone.
Okay.
My mistake.
How will that be effective with all the new people that are coming on the board?
Oh, it
Doesn't.
What happens is, the new board, they read what they get for that meeting, but it's not a hearing that requires listening to the tapes or certifying the prior hearing review, because it's not that type of matter. It's a legislative matter as opposed to a quasi-judicial matter.
So subcommittee did their work, they made the recommendation to the township committee. Well, this board then, the township committee withdrew it, will reintroduce it, send it back. The subcommittee is no longer formed, but the 2017 Landuse board will then reconsider the referral, or there'll be a new board, they'll consider the referral, and then whatever.
Go back
recommendation
again,
is, send it
back to the
township
committee.
Committee.
So
For-
your institutional knowledge of this subject was
Right.
decided sometime in 2017. And it shows you that the committee does the ordinances, the board does recommendations and does the master plan.
But we won't forget about it, correct?
Oh, no.
No.
Don't be forgotten about.
It's a fresh topic. Took
Right.
some time to get
It's been a
to it,
long
but
time
you
to
had
get
some
to
very
that
good
point.
ideas.
Right.
Good. Okay, well, that's good.
That's my
Correction?
Clarification.
That's your correction.
Clarification.
Okay.
Trina, you can tell Mimi that I said that in a public forum.
It's on video.
It's on tape.
Call her, tell her what.
Okay, so we have, all right, so we have some pending.
Can I say
Oh,
something?
absolutely.
Speaking of owning up to mistakes, when we heard the ordinance about not sending out the mailing, what we saw before us was a document that said such and such ordinance is being canceled. Now, I, for one, never saw or didn't see the ordinance that was being canceled. And it seems like, sort of for future, perhaps, that when we're doing something like that, we should see the ordinance that we're canceling and read it and make sure that all it says is that, we're not going to send out this mailing. There may be a sentence in there. We may say, wait a minute, maybe we want to keep that. So I'm just saying, at the time, I should have said something like, wait a minute, where is this ordinance we're canceling? So of course, I took everyone's word for it, that that's all it said, which is fine, but I suppose by rights, we should actually see it and read it.
It makes sense, Nick, and I think in the future we should do that. We'll,
I think it would make sense to talk about it,
right.
you know, give the folks on the board a chance to read it on their own,
Mhm.
and then come back.
Mhm.
That's
I agree.
the-
I think that the future will do that. Mhm. Okay. Okay, I think we have some, we done? We done? And Vulcan? Yeah, okay. We have some applications, so any changes or,
There are really no changes with the pending applications. The New York SMSA is complete. As far as, and flipping to the next page as it relates to Veterans Street funding, that's on for the next hearing on January 12th. And Mr. Mayor, there obviously will be new people on the board, and Trina will need to know who they are as soon as possible, because they're going to have to listen to the tapes, a prior meeting, and all the documentation before that hearing.
Okay.
do we have any new information that's come in on that, or?
It would come in,
It has not.
but they have to get caught up on the old.
Well, yeah, I know, but,
And what I say, Trina, we should also get them a copy of all the documentation that was submitted by the applicant. They have to listen to this tape. They also should have all the plans and everything that's submitted, so you probably have to ask the applicant for more copies.
But could it be that it's so different that none of that applies?
They haven't submitted anything new.
Yeah,
So the only thing in front of you is what they originally submitted.
right. And they should have submitted it by now if it's,
If they were going to have something new, I would,
Yeah.
if not, it'll come in before the next meeting.
Yeah.
And they'll be able to get it anyway.
yeah.
And luckily, they only had one meeting, so the new members only have one meeting to catch up on.
Right.
right.
The other applications are Perone, that's still incomplete, and Lamington Road LLC was on February 2nd.
Yes, okay.
Moving right along.
Moving right along. Well, I think that's all there is. Do we hear a motion to close the meeting?
Second.
And happy holidays.
Happy holidays to everybody.
holidays.
Yep.